Picture this. Right now, this very moment, you hold a quiet power. A power not to control the world around you, but to master the way you move through it. To take the fire of adversity and forge it into clarity. To turn inner storms into moments of deliberate stillness. But how? Today we begin a journey through a principle as old as the Stoics themselves, yet more urgent now than ever, learning to respond rather than react. Pause for a moment and reflect. When was the last time something triggered you, a conversation, a delay, a disappointment? What did you do? Did you lash out, withdraw, spiral? Or did you stop, breathe, and choose? That is the hidden door. That moment, the space between what happens and how you respond to it. This is where the Stoic lives. This is where the real transformation begins. Because Stoicism doesn't promise an easier life. It offers a stronger mind. Today we'll walk slowly, deliberately, through the core of this idea. How to train your mind to respond from presence and virtue, rather than reflex and ego. This is not about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering its momentum. It's about creating a still point within you that remains intact, no matter how loudly life moves outside. We'll pull wisdom from ancient voices and blend it with modern insight. We'll explore how to pause, how to observe, how to stand in the eye of the storm and remain unchanged by its winds. And by the end of this letter, you'll not only understand how to practice this art, you'll know how to carry it into your relationships, your choices, your inner world. If you're ready for this kind of inner work, comment now. I choose to respond, not react. Let that be your first act of intention today. Also, if you haven't yet, subscribe. This space isn't for the masses. It's for the few who are done being pulled by chaos and ready to walk with clarity. Every like, every share, every comment helps this message reach those silently searching for strength. Stay with me, because the lesson buried near the end of this reflection may rewire your understanding of peace and hand you a tool the modern world forgot existed. There's a line most never see, yet it defines the entire trajectory of a life. The line between reaction and response. A reaction is fast, it's raw, it's primal. It's your nervous system flaring up in defense, lashing, fleeing, freezing. It's what happens when your sense of self is unguarded, when emotion hijacks intention, when your past wounds answer before your present wisdom gets a chance to speak. But a response, that's different. A response is slow, it's thoughtful, it's measured. It is your values speaking louder than your impulses. The Stoics taught that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can always control what it becomes in us. That control is not the world's to give, it's yours to reclaim. So ask yourself, in your daily life, in arguments, in traffic, in frustration, who is speaking through you, your higher mind or your bruised ego? Most of our suffering doesn't come from what life throws at us. It comes from how quickly and blindly we react. A harsh word, a mistake, a delay. Each becomes a fire we feed with fuel we didn't realize we were carrying. But Stoicism teaches a different path, not one of cold detachment, but of conscious engagement, of slowing down enough to ask, what is mine to control here? What matters most in this moment? What would wisdom do now, not my wounded pride? That's not weakness, that's mastery. And the world needs more men who are no longer slaves to their triggers. So the next time the pressure rises, the insult, the failure, the disappointment, don't flinch. Don't fire back, pause, breathe, look in, and then choose. Choose who you want to be in that moment, not who the moment is trying to provoke. The next reflection may reveal the hidden reason your peace keeps slipping through your hands. And it will begin to give you the tools to stop being dragged by emotions and start leading them. Look around. We live in a time of noise, digital wars, instant opinions, emotional outbursts dressed as truth. Everyone is reacting to everything. Faster, louder, angrier. But here's the cost. We've mistaken urgency for importance and noise for clarity. The modern world rewards speed over thought, outrage over wisdom. And in the process, we've forgotten how to think before we move. We've forgotten how to feel without performing. We've forgotten how to pause without panicking. But the Stoic doesn't play that game. He understands that true power is not in domination, but in direction. Not in winning arguments, but in holding alignment. When everyone else is reacting, he responds. That is not passivity, that is poise. And in a world that glorifies emotional volatility as authenticity, a man who chooses silence, breath, and deliberation becomes rare, almost dangerous. Because you can't manipulate a man who doesn't react. You can't provoke him into foolishness. You can't bait him into betraying himself. He's not playing to be seen. He's acting from center. And that kind of presence changes everything. It changes how you lead, how you listen, how you love, how you live. Because every time you respond instead of react, you send a signal, not just to others, but to yourself. I am in command of me. And that quiet command spreads to your relationships, your work, your sense of self. You begin to feel less pulled, less shaken, more rooted. Not because the world got easier, but because you stopped letting it control your internal weather. So ask yourself, are you letting the chaos of the world define your direction? Or are you anchoring into something deeper than the moment? The next part will give you the practical mental tools to build this kind of presence, day by day. And you may find that the most powerful shift isn't external. It's in how you meet each moment from the inside out. If you want to stop reacting, don't start with control. Start with awareness. Because you can't command what you haven't yet noticed. The Stoics knew this. They didn't try to white-knuckle their emotions into silence. They studied them. They wrote them down. They walked with them. Not as enemies, but as signals to be understood. Self-awareness isn't a luxury. It's your foundation. When you can observe the wave rising inside you, the anger, the anxiety, the urgency, you create space. And in that space, you get your power back. That space is your freedom. This is where the practice begins. You see the spark, and instead of letting it ignite, you pause. That pause, that's the forge. Marcus Aurelius wrote of it often. That sacred breath between stimulus and action, where you are no longer a slave to emotion, but a servant of reason. So start there. Pause. Breathe. Feel the emotion. Name it. And then choose what to do with it. You're not repressing. You're refining. Another powerful tool, reframing. The Stoics were masters of perspective. They looked at adversity and asked not why me, but how can this strengthen me? A delay becomes a training ground for patience. An insult becomes a test of dignity. A failure becomes a sculptor of endurance. This isn't mental gymnastics, it's mental clarity. Because when you shift your interpretation, you shift your energy. You stop giving away your stability to things you can't control and invest it in the one thing you always can, your next move. Finally, remember this. The practice is daily. It's not something you get once and move on. It's a discipline, one that's forged through repetition, reflection, and grace for yourself when you fall short. So begin your mornings with intention. End your nights with review. Notice your patterns, celebrate the wins, especially the invisible ones, and above all, keep returning. Because the man who trains his mind to respond is not trying to be calm, he's becoming calm. And from that calm, he acts. The next insight will shift how you see emotions, not as enemies, but as messages waiting to be mastered. This is the key to strength without suppression, and presence without losing yourself. Too often we treat emotions like a threat. We fear their intensity, mistrust their presence, and try to silence them before they speak. But the Stoics never taught emotional suppression. They taught emotional mastery. Your emotions are not flaws, they're signals. They are the first knock at the door of awareness, but you must choose whether to invite them in or let them take over the house. Anger, sadness, fear, they are not shameful, they are human, and the Stoic recognizes them as such. But he does something different with them. He doesn't obey, he observes. He watches the storm roll in without becoming the storm. Epictetus said, "When something happens, the only thing in your power is your response." And sometimes that response begins with simply being present with what you feel, without identifying with it. You can say, "This is anger," not "I am angry." This is fear, not "I am fear." This small shift, it's everything. It reminds you you are the sky, not the weather. Once you separate emotion from identity, you gain room to think, choose, and act. You start asking, what triggered this? What deeper need is beneath it? Is this emotion asking for action or simply acknowledgement? And then the greatest move, you respond. From clarity, from principle, from reason, not reflex. That's the Stoic way. Not to feel less, but to feel wisely, to turn emotional chaos into inner command. And over time, you begin to trust yourself, because you know you won't betray your values just because something flared inside you. You carry emotion, but you are no longer carried away by it. What comes next will ground all this practice into your daily routine. Because mastering response isn't about theory, it's about repetition, discipline, real-world rituals that shape who you become. You become what you practice every single day. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. And when it comes to mastering your responses, there is no exception. If you want to stop being reactive, you must train for it. Deliberately, ritually, relentlessly. This isn't about a single moment of insight. It's about building a lifestyle around awareness. The Stoics lived this. They didn't just read philosophy, they wrote it. They reflected at dawn. They reviewed their behavior at dusk. They journaled about their flaws, their impulses, their moments of virtue and weakness. You can do the same. Start your mornings with intention. Ask yourself, what kind of man do I want to be today? What will I do when I'm tested? Not if, but when. Then, as life unfolds, watch yourself. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. Note the moments when you almost reacted. Celebrate the ones when you paused. And if you do react, good. Now you have material. You have something to refine. Your emotional missteps are not failures, they are feedback. Make space in your day for micro-reflections. A minute between tasks, a breath before a conversation, a question before you respond. What would the man I admire do here? Use your journal, not for your image, but for your integrity. Every night, sit down and ask, where did I respond with strength today? Where did I let emotion lead me? What will I choose differently tomorrow? Over time, this becomes more than a practice. It becomes a posture, a way of moving through the world with presence and principle. And don't walk this path alone. Speak with others who value this work. Share ideas, share struggles. You're not performing for them. You're sharpening with them. Because in a world that rushes, rages, and reacts, the men who pause, who choose, who reflect, will build a different kind of strength, not loud, but unshakable, not performative, but peaceful. The next insight ties together every lesson we've touched, and it reveals what this entire practice is actually building in you. Stay with me. This is the moment when the path becomes identity. Every response is a brick. You are the architect. It's easy to believe that your identity is fixed, that you are who you are. But the truth is far more empowering and far more demanding. You are building yourself with every response you choose, not just the big ones, every breath, between anger and restraint, every pause before speaking what doesn't need to be said, every moment you reflect instead of explode. These are not small acts, they are architecture. When you choose to respond, consciously, deliberately, in alignment with virtue, you are not just managing conflict. You are shaping character, layer by layer, choice by choice, and over time something emerges, a man who is not easily provoked, a man who moves with clarity in chaos, a man who can hold space for complexity without being torn apart by it. That is the Stoic ideal. Not a man without emotion, but a man whose emotions serve something higher than ego. You start to see that each difficult moment is an invitation, an opportunity to demonstrate to yourself, this is who I am now. Not the boy who lashed out, not the version of you that folded under pressure, but the sculptor, shaping stillness in real time. There's nothing flashy about this work, it won't get you trending, but it will make you trustworthy to others and to yourself. Because self-trust isn't built in the moments when everything is easy. It's built when things go sideways and you don't. And this is the quiet reward of a responsive life. You stop fearing how the world moves because you've learned how to remain unmoved. Not indifferent, but anchored, not numb, but aware and in command. The final reflection is next, and it's not just a closing, it's a calling. If you've made it this far, then what comes now is for you. Stay with me, you've walked with me through each layer of this letter. You've seen that Stoicism isn't abstract, it's lived. That every moment is a crossroads. That your next word, your next breath, your next choice is either a reaction or a response. Now you must decide, will you let the world shape you by pressure, or will you shape yourself by principle? You don't need a perfect record. You need a practiced intention. You don't need to eliminate all emotion. You need to know when to listen and when to lead. You don't need to silence your anger. You need to redirect its fire into action, aligned with your highest values. This is the quiet revolution the Stoics began, and it's waiting for you to continue it, not through grand gestures, but through daily choices. A reflective pause, a thoughtful question, a word left unsaid because it would betray your center. This is the path, not easy, not glamorous, but real and rare. The modern world doesn't need more reaction. It needs more restraint. It needs men who have sat with themselves long enough to no longer be owned by impulse. And if you are one of them, one of us, prove it now. Not with noise, but with a simple act of alignment. Comment below. I am the space between stimulus and response. That phrase is not decoration. It's a declaration. Let it mark your practice. Let it mark your presence here. And if this letter brought you value, share it, not for reach, but for resonance. There is someone in your life right now, maybe a brother, a friend, a father, or even a younger version of yourself, who needs to hear that stillness is possible. Send this to him. Let this letter be the breath that clears the fog. And if you haven't yet subscribed, not for content, but for the ritual, for the daily returning, for the quiet sharpening of who you are becoming. Letters to a Stoic Mind is not a channel, it's a discipline, a community of modern-day Stoics carving virtue in silence together. So as this video fades and the music rises, I ask one final thing of you. Stay, sit with the stillness, let it settle into you. Let the work you've done here today echo. Don't rush off, don't scroll away. Let the last minute become your first act of practice, not reaction, just presence. I'll see you in the next letter.